What the hell are you doing here? This isn't some charity buffet. Get your entitled ass away from me before I have you thrown out. The words exploded from Charles Rockwell's mouth like venom. The billionaire's face twisted in a mask of fury, towering over Amira Bell, black, brilliant, and completely undeterred. Her sapphire gown shimmered beneath the chandeliers of the Fairmont Grand Hotel. But no fabric on earth could shield her from what came next. "You don't belong here," Rockwell snarled, stepping closer, voice rising with each syllable. "Know your place." Then, without warning, he shoved her. Gasps erupted like thunderclaps. Amira's body flew backward, the motion too fast for logic to catch up. She slammed into the illuminated pool with a splash so violent it silenced the string quartet mid-note. Water surged skyward like a fountain of exposed secrets. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Her figure disappeared beneath the surface. Silence ruled the terrace. Then she emerged, gasping, eyes wide, drenched, mascara running like rivers of shame. But she did not cry. She rose, she stood, and she stared. Phones were out. Dozens of stunned guests, decked in tuxedos and sequin-draped gowns, stood frozen. Their expensive watches ticked in unison. None moved, but every lens recorded. Except one, Charles. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his lapel, and gave the pool a contemptuous glance. "Maybe now you'll remember your place," he said, his voice cold enough to freeze steel. But what Rockwell didn't know, what he couldn't fathom through the haze of arrogance and generational supremacy, was that in precisely 23 minutes, the empire he'd inherited would begin to collapse, and the fall would be brutal, public, and irreversible. Inside the ballroom, untouched by the chaos outside, champagne still flowed and deals were whispered over foie gras, unaware, unbothered. Yet, behind those velvet ropes, beneath the chandeliers and beneath Charles's carefully polished persona, the seed of his own destruction had just sprouted. The push wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. A billionaire, white, powerful, untouchable, violently reminding a black woman that she didn't belong in his world, but she did, and her presence alone was the rebellion he feared. 3 miles away, in the back of a rideshare headed downtown, a teen stared at his phone. "Yo, this billionaire just shoved some lady into a pool," he yelled, eyes wide. The driver blinked. "At the Fairmont? That gala?" The algorithm had already begun. TikTok, Instagram, X, hashtags were blooming in real time. Bosch and Galagate. Push privilege. Charles Rockwell exposed. The pool glistened. Amira's soaked gown clung to her like justice ready to pounce. Inside, her husband, Elijah Bell, a visionary tech CEO, soon-to-be industry icon, was still shaking hands and closing billion-dollar deals. A smile played on his face. It wouldn't last long. Because Charles Rockwell had just shoved the wife of the man keeping his empire alive, and the world was watching. What Charles couldn't comprehend in his drunken haze of entitlement was that Amira wasn't just a guest. She was a Harvard-educated attorney, a storm in heels, and the queen to a king with leverage that could end him. That shove? It wasn't just a racist assault. It was corporate suicide, and the countdown had already begun. Stick around, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about wealth, race, and revenge. This isn't just drama. It's a dismantling. 3 days earlier, the view from the top floor of the Novatech Tower in downtown Atlanta shimmered with morning light. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed the city's evolving skyline, a reflection of the man who built the empire it overlooked. Elijah Bell sat behind a mahogany desk the size of a studio apartment. Contracts worth millions lay neatly stacked, but his eyes lingered on just one document, a proposal so significant it carried weight beyond dollars. Rockwell Group, strategic acquisition proposal, $1.1 billion, he exhaled. Elijah wasn't just a tech CEO, he was the architect of PulseMind, the most advanced AI prediction software on the market, and now every global titan was fighting to buy in. But Charles Rockwell had come with the deepest pockets, and the worst baggage, twice in the last month. Rockwell had flown in from New York in his private jet, throwing increasingly desperate offers at the table. Money wasn't the issue. Integrity was. Elijah's phone buzzed. He ignored it, still thinking about the deal. Amira stepped into the office, navy pantsuit crisp, confidence glowing. She moved like someone who had conquered courtrooms and corporate boards, because she had, a Harvard law graduate, founding partner of Bell & Crawford, and Elijah's wife of 10 years. He smiled and held up the document, Rockwell's final offer. It's bloated, risky, and desperate. Just how I like my leverage. Amira raised a brow as she scanned the numbers. He's offering almost double our market value, she said slowly, which means his company's bleeding faster than he's letting on. Elijah leaned back. His real estate holdings are collapsing. Market volatility, outdated analytics, and he's refused to modernize until now. Without our AI, he's toast in 6 months. She tapped the table. And we're the only ones with tech that can reverse his decline. Elijah nodded. This deal would take us global, but partnering with someone like Rockwell? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her gaze drifted to the framed newspaper cover on the wall. Elijah's face smiling under the headline, "From the Hood to Headline Billionaire." "We've worked too hard," she said finally. "I won't let his name tarnish what we've built." The pause was deep, tense, honest. "Then come with me to the gala," Elijah said. Amira blinked. "You're really going?" "I want to look the devil in the eye before I decide whether or not to make a deal with him." She gave a small, sharp smile. "Fine, but I'm bringing my spine, not just a smile." As she turned to leave, Elijah's voice stopped her. "Amira." She looked back. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "you remind me of why I started this company, this fight, this life." She winked. "Then you'd better close the deal like a king or walk away like a legend." He smiled, but it was thin, the kind of smile men wear when they already know something's off. And he did. A gut feeling, minor and nagging, had been growing stronger every time Rockwell smiled too wide, promised too much, or shook his hand for too little. Neither of them knew yet. In 72 hours, Amira would be pulled out of a pool, and Charles Rockwell would be drowning in the ruins of his own empire. And Pulse Mind, it would soon be worth more than Charles Rockwell's name. Because empires don't fall overnight, but they do start shaking days before the world notices. Keep watching. The tremors are getting stronger. In a mansion built like a Roman temple, complete with marble columns and imported chandeliers, Charles Rockwell paced like a predator in a collapsing cage. The antique oak floors beneath his loafers groaned as if they too were tired of holding him up. Papers littered his mahogany desk, reports, loan warnings, flagged emails, and every one of them told the same story. His empire was burning. The Rockwell Group, once synonymous with American wealth, was bleeding capital like a wounded beast. The 2023 real estate crash had vaporized entire portfolios. Construction costs had soared. Vacancy rates in commercial properties were at an all-time high, and his board. They were circling like vultures. "How the hell did we go from Forbes cover to Chapter 11 in 3 quarters? He growled, slamming a trembling fist on the table. "Sir?" came a timid voice from the doorway. Margot, his executive assistant for over a decade, stood there clutching a leather folder. Her blazer was sharp, but her eyes were full of quiet dread. She knew this version of Charles too well. When the mask slipped, danger emerged. "The Bell contract is ready for tonight's gala," she said. "He didn't turn. Did you review it?" "Yes, sir." Legal added indemnity clauses to protect us from AI-generated losses, and the exclusivity clause was strengthened. "Good. The last thing I need is that genius from Silicon Avenue jumping ship after 6 months." Margot hesitated. "Are you sure about tonight, sir? Maybe a quieter meeting?" "Absolutely not," Charles snapped. "Public spectacle equals public confidence. If I close this deal in front of Atlanta's elite, it'll restore perception. That's half the battle." She didn't argue, but as she turned to go, he added, "And make sure security knows where the Bells are at all times. I want no surprises." She paused. You mean like surveillance? I mean exactly that. Margot nodded and left, but her thoughts lingered. He was unraveling. And when Charles Rockwell unraveled, people got hurt. Inside, Charles stared at his own reflection in the window, a man who inherited wealth but never earned respect. The thought haunted him. Because Elijah Bell wasn't just a rival, he was a threat to everything Charles believed made him superior. And Amira. She was worse. She had the kind of intelligence and grace that money couldn't buy. And Charles hated her for it. He hated how rooms quieted when she spoke, how even men twice her age deferred to her legal mind. He hated that when she walked into a room, people listened to her. They weren't supposed to, not in his world. Not people like them. He clenched the edge of the desk, knuckles bone white. No one humiliates me, he whispered. He turned toward the wall safe, spun the dial, and retrieved a velvet box. Inside sat a sapphire cufflink, just one. Its twin was lost the night his father died. He stared at it like a talisman, like a promise. Tonight, he would take back control, one way or another, and if it meant crossing a line. He'd already erased it in his mind. Downstairs, his driver stood by the armored Escalade, engine running, unaware he'd be driving the boss to the last deal of his career. The gala was only hours away, and Charles Rockwell wasn't going to let the future arrive quietly. The hunt had already begun. Don't blink. The predators are circling, and someone's about to become prey. The Fairmont Grand Hotel sparkled like a gemstone under the Atlanta night sky. Valet drivers in black tuxedos opened doors to Bentleys and Teslas, guiding guests beneath a marble archway dripping in ivy and legacy. Inside the grand ballroom, wealth oozed from every chandelier, every champagne flute, every note from the string quartet playing Bach beside a $10,000 ice sculpture. But all eyes turned when Elijah and Amira Bell stepped into the light. She wore midnight blue, flowing like power incarnate. He wore classic black, sharp enough to cut glass. Together they didn't walk. They arrived. The murmurs were instant. Is that him? That's Elijah Bell. The tech guy? Yeah, built that AI thing, real smart. Is that his wife? She's stunning. Phones rose for pictures. Socialites whispered behind manicured nails. Elijah and Amira ignored it all, heads high, eyes forward. They weren't here for approval. They were here for confirmation that they belonged exactly where they stood. Mr. and Mrs. Bell, welcome, said the hotel manager, stepping forward with practiced warmth. Mr. Rockwell's been asking about your arrival every 10 minutes. Amira smiled politely. Elijah's grip on her hand tightened ever so slightly. Inside the ballroom, Charles Rockwell stood near the bar, surrounded by his usual power circle, Senator Brian Lancaster, Judge Corin Hayes, and bank CEO Gerald Vaughan, together. They controlled the city's flow of money, influence, and justice. And tonight, they were all watching the same door. There's our golden goose, Charles muttered, draining his drink. His knuckles whitened around the glass. Across the ballroom, Amira felt eyes on her, heavy, unblinking. They're already positioning, she said under her breath. I know, Elijah replied. Just play it cool. Charles approached them with the charisma of a man who'd shaken 1,000 hands and betrayed half of them. Elijah, Amira. Wonderful to see you both, he said, voice loud enough to draw nearby attention. He hugged Elijah a beat too long, kissed Amira's hand a shade too possessively, smiled wide and hollow. You look radiant, Amira, he said. That dress, absolutely regal. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Thank you, Charles. It's custom. I figured I'd dress for the occasion. He chuckled, missing the frost in her tone. I hope you've reviewed the final proposal thoroughly, Elijah. We have a lot to talk about tonight. We'll get to that, Elijah said, scanning the crowd. I want to enjoy the evening first. Charles's smile tightened. Of course. But remember, opportunities this big don't wait forever. They posed for a few photos. The cameras caught perfect posture and flawless smiles, but none of the tension that hummed just beneath the surface. Then Amira leaned into Elijah's ear. "I'm going to step out to the terrace for some air." He nodded. "Be careful." As she walked away, Charles watched her go. Eyes narrowed, jaw tight. Senator Lancaster joined his side. "That woman doesn't know her place." Charles said nothing, but the look on his face, it said everything. Just then a tray of champagne passed. He grabbed one. His hand trembled. Across the ballroom, Gerald Vaughn whispered, "You sure this is the best time to close the deal?" Charles didn't answer. His eyes never left the terrace door. Because sometimes control doesn't mean signing the deal. Sometimes it means reminding people who controls the room, and Charles Rockwell. He was moments away from making the worst decision of his life. Keep watching. The illusion of elegance is about to snap. The terrace was quiet, too quiet. Amira stepped into the night air and exhaled, letting the noise of the ballroom fade behind the glass doors. The pool sparkled in the center of the stone courtyard, calm and cool, a perfect contrast to the tension bubbling behind her sternum. She took out her phone to check messages from her firm, 3 emails, 2 alerts, 1 new discrimination case with disturbing ties to Rockwell's legal counsel. She frowned. Inside, Charles Rockwell hovered near the bar with his entourage. But something in his posture had changed. No longer the calm host. Now he looked like a man barely holding something in. "He's watching her," murmured Judge Hayes, swirling her drink. "Like she's an insect," Lancaster added, acting like she's queen of the damn ball. "She thinks she can swim with sharks because her husband wrote some code," Vaughn chuckled darkly. "She'll learn," Charles muttered. "Tonight." The 4 men shared a look, one built on years of shared prejudice, whispered slurs behind closed doors, and boardroom decisions that excluded the very people funding their portfolios. Alcohol flowed, restraint drained. "She's by the pool alone," Vaughn noted. Charles's glass hit the marble bar harder than intended. "Let's get some air," he said, straightening his tie. They followed like wolves, scenting blood. Amira sensed them before she heard them. The rhythm of 4 pairs of expensive shoes crossing the terrace stone. Her spine straightened. Her phone slid into her clutch. She didn't turn. "Beautiful evening," came Charles's voice, slick with malice. She slowly turned, polite smile on, courtroom ready. "Indeed, I was just enjoying the view." "Funny," Senator Lancaster said, stepping into her space. "We were just discussing how views like this weren't made for everyone." The air thickened. Amira didn't flinch. And yet, here I am. "You really think money and a fancy degree put you on equal footing?" Vaughn said, voice low and sharp. "You people get a few wins and suddenly think you're royalty." "Excuse me?" Amira's voice dropped an octave. "Let's not pretend," Charles said, stepping closer. "You married up. You latched onto something greater. But deep down, you know you don't belong in rooms like this." "I earned my place," she snapped. Lancaster sneered. "Your people don't earn. They infiltrate." She laughed. "Once. And what exactly do you think this is? A plantation ball?" That silenced them for a beat too long. Rockwell's face twisted. "You think you're untouchable?" Amira's eyes locked onto his. "Try me." Judge Hayes chuckled. "You know, it's always amusing when people forget that decorum only protects them as long as we allow it." "Decorum?" Amira's voice sharpened. "Is that what you call this? 4 grown men cornering a woman by a pool?" "She called us men," Vaughn snickered. "That's generous. You're not men," she said evenly. "You're cowards hiding behind power you didn't earn." Charles stepped in, nose inches from hers. "Careful, counselor. This world isn't as progressive as your Twitter feed makes you think. And maybe it's time someone reminded you whose name is on the deeds, not just the guest list," Lancaster added with venom. Inside, Elijah's smile evaporated. He scanned the terrace, eyes narrowing. Something wasn't right. A waiter passed. "Sir, your wife asked me to let you know she's outside." Elijah moved. fast. And on the terrace, a line was about to be crossed. Keep watching. The fall always begins with one step too far. The moment snapped like a brittle bone. Charles Rockwell, red-faced and wild-eyed, stepped forward and shoved Amira Bell with both hands. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't a misstep. It was violent. Her heels slid on the polished stone, her body arched backward, and then impact. She crashed into the water with a sound like thunder breaking glass. Waves surged over the pool's edge. Gasps echoed from the ballroom as dozens of faces pressed against the glass. Someone screamed. Cameras were already rolling. Amira surfaced, coughing, hair plastered to her face, mascara running in jagged rivers down her cheeks. She clutched the edge of the pool, breath ragged, body shaking, but her eyes never broke contact with Charles. He stood at the edge, tuxedo immaculate, smirk curling his lips. "Maybe now you'll remember your place," he said. The sentence lingered like acid in the air. Guests poured onto the terrace. Phones rose. Murmurs became shouts. Then, "Elijah!" It was the hotel manager, calling from the ballroom doors. And there he was. Elijah Bell stormed through the crowd like a force of nature, his eyes locked onto Amira, soaked, furious, humiliated. Then to Charles, smirking, smug, unraveling. Elijah didn't speak. He didn't need to. The crowd parted. Gasps hushed. The music had stopped. Charles turned, color draining from his face. "Elijah, wait. It's not what it—" "You assaulted my wife," Elijah said, voice low, sharp enough to cut through stone, in front of witnesses, in front of God. "She was provoking us." "No." Elijah stepped closer. "You just destroyed your empire." Charles's lips parted, but no words came. Elijah helped Amira out of the water, wrapping a towel around her trembling shoulders. The guests watched, frozen in the moment. News reporters on the invite list were already filming. The footage was uploading in real time. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, CNN. Everyone was watching. "You think you can fix this?" Elijah said, voice trembling with rage. "There's no fix for this. There's no NDA, no payoff, no spin." "Please," Charles whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. His voice cracked. It was just a moment. A misunderstanding. Flashbulbs caught the tears on Amira's cheeks. "Not weakness, fury. Don't do this," he begged. But Elijah just shook his head. "I'm not doing anything." He turned to the guests. "You all saw it. You recorded it. You know what happened." Amira stepped forward. Water was dripping from her gown. "I suggest you call your lawyer, Charles," she said, calm and cutting, "and your board, and your crisis PR team. You're going to need them all." A hush settled, and then someone in the crowd whispered, "He's done." Elijah looked at Charles one last time. "You thought this night would end with a billion-dollar signature. Instead, it ends with your legacy sinking faster than your morality ever did." And then she walked away, one step, then another, leaving puddles and power in her wake. Guests made a path, not for Charles, for her, because power had just shifted, and everyone knew it. Charles Rockwell stood alone. And the world? It had just turned against him. Don't go anywhere. The empire's about to crack wide open. The collapse didn't wait for the morning. It began before Amira had even changed out of her soaked gown. Guests flooded social media with real-time uploads. Videos of the assault circulated faster than wildfire in a drought-stricken forest. Within 20 minutes, hashtags were trending across platforms. Rockwell exposed poolside privilege. Justice for Amira. Pushback. The footage had everything: wealth, violence, race, power, and poetic justice. Influencers, activists, and even celebrities began reposting it. Civil rights lawyers commented live. Politicians drafted statements. Media outlets went into overdrive. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere had curdled. Elijah stood silently beside Amira, surrounded by a stunned group of allies. Charles, however, was swarmed by panicked aides, red-faced PR reps, and one board member already dialing his broker. "You need to issue a statement, now," hissed one advisor. Charles was pale, sweaty, and disoriented. "They don't understand." She provoked me. A PR manager grabbed his elbow. "You laid hands on the wife of the most influential black CEO in the region. They understand just fine." Another aide shoved a drafted apology onto his phone. "We need to push this before the 11 o'clock news hits." He couldn't focus, couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. By midnight, news crews were setting up outside the hotel. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, even TMZ had someone at the scene. Guests were offering interviews. Staff whispered to reporters. One video captured Charles snapping at the security personnel. Another caught him stumbling over a slurred denial. But the moment that sealed his fate came just after 12:30 a.m. Elijah Bell stepped onto the makeshift media stage just outside the valet circle. Amira stood beside him, regal even in damp satin. Their presence alone commanded silence. "Elijah, do you have a comment on what happened tonight?" asked a journalist. He waited. Flashbulbs popped. The crowd hushed. "Yes," he said finally. "Tonight, a billionaire who needed our technology to save his company assaulted my wife in front of 300 witnesses. Let me be clear, the deal is off. Technova will never work with the Rockwell Group, ever." Gasps erupted, phones buzzed, live streams spiked. And Charles? He had just stepped outside and heard every word. "You can't do this," he shouted, voice cracking. "You'll ruin everything." Elijah didn't flinch. "I'm not ruining anything. You did that all by yourself." Charles lunged forward, but hotel security blocked him with military precision. And the guests? They clapped. Loud, unified, defiant. Rockwell had gone viral, not as a titan of industry, but as a cautionary tale of arrogance, racism, and unchecked power. A woman in the crowd yelled, "It's about damn time." By 2 a.m., the Rockwell Group's internal Slack channel was chaos. Executives were leaking resignation letters. Employees were contacting recruiters. Several high-profile clients began issuing termination notices. His lawyer resigned via email. His family's trust was frozen pending review of the litigation. His board scheduled an emergency call for 8 a.m. Journalists flooded the airwaves with panels titled "The Fall of Rockwell, The Viral Reckoning, and Tawang's Push Privilege, The Cost of Hate in High Society." The empire wasn't just shaking, it was imploding in real time. Elijah and Amira left the hotel without fanfare, but every camera followed them, every mic captured their quiet dignity, and every headline crowned them the new face of integrity in American business. Charles, meanwhile, remained behind, a billionaire. Now, completely alone. Keep watching. This collapse isn't the end, it's just the beginning of accountability. The reckoning hit like a tidal wave. By sunrise, the Rockwell Group was hemorrhaging credibility and capital. Stock plummeted, investors pulled out, creditors demanded immediate reviews. At 7:12 a.m., Bloomberg reported Rockwell Group had lost $423 million in overnight valuation. At 8:03 a.m., their largest client, Southmark Holdings, terminated all active contracts, citing irreparable brand damage. By 9:45 a.m., Charles Rockwell's personal assistant emailed her resignation. So did his CFO and his lead counsel. Elijah and Amira? They were already in meetings with civil rights leaders, strategic allies, and CEOs who had once stayed silent, but now wanted to be on the right side of history. The footage from the gala became a case study within 48 hours. Law schools, business schools, PR crisis seminars. Everywhere, Charles tried to fight back, tried to issue apologies, and tried to sue for defamation. But the internet is undefeated. Truth has a more enduring memory than legacy. A week later, Rockwell's home was surrounded by protesters. His family went silent. His children were pulled from private school. His wife filed for separation. His golf club rescinded membership. Luxury brands distanced themselves. The phone that once rang with influence now only brought legal threats and interview requests. The final blow came when the Department of Justice opened a formal civil rights investigation into Rockwell's hiring practices and property sales over the past 20 years. It wasn't just about a shove anymore. It was about a pattern. It was systemic, and it was over. Subpoenas followed, so did whistleblowers. Former employees came forward with stories, including emails, recordings, and receipts. Margot, his former assistant, testified about boardroom conversations where Charles joked about keeping neighborhoods clean. Those jokes were now evidence. Charles Rockwell resigned from his company under pressure. The board voted unanimously to liquidate assets and dissolve the corporation. Technova's valuation tripled. Amira was named one of Time's Women of the Year. Elijah's name topped Forbes' most trusted CEOs in America. But more importantly, something shifted. Boardrooms took notice. Gatekeepers paid attention. University panels hosted the Bell Effect, studying how one moment of dignity and refusal changed corporate accountability forever. The Fairmont Grand renamed its pool terrace. The Bell Reflection Garden. A plaque beneath the glass walkway read, "Here, a woman stood tall while power collapsed around her." The footage lived on, in law seminars, documentaries, and as a reminder. One shove, one moment, one arrogant choice, it can bring down an empire. But only when the right people refuse to stay silent. As for Charles Rockwell, he disappeared from public life. His net worth plummeted. His properties were auctioned. His name became a warning label. History wouldn't forget, not because he fell. But because Amira rose, she went on to launch the Bell Justice Initiative, a foundation supporting legal defense for victims of discrimination in corporate America. Her first case? A class action lawsuit against another real estate giant with a similar track record to Rockwell's. The legacy she built wasn't just reactive, it was proactive. It was revolutionary. And Elijah? He turned Technova into a global symbol of ethical innovation, hiring from underrepresented communities, mentoring the next generation of changemakers, and never forgetting who he was before the money came. Their story didn't end with revenge. It continued with reform. Because justice isn't just about watching someone fall, it's about building something more substantial in their place. If this story moved you, share it like this video. Subscribe for more true stories where arrogance meets consequence. And tell us in the comments, what does accountability mean to you? Your voice matters. Use it.